Please continue.
Yeah, Pratham. Hi. Yeah, so yeah, first of all, thank you for inviting me. This is a very interesting conference, very technical on modeling, which is I like it. Uh, I will start with my presentation, but before that, I want to say that this is going to be kind of a very interactive kind of discussion, because my presentation is more about larger insights that could be derived from models. So it's not really a technical modeling training session, so to speak. It is more about how can we derive learnings from modeling applications, and that's why I think it will be great to hear from the participants who are there. So please feel free to interject me, but I also will continue to ask questions, and I'm hoping to hear a lot of answers to my questions, because I think this is people generally know a lot about a lot of policy. If you just continue to read newspapers, reports, policy reports, and all, we will know a lot about what is going on, and then we'll connect it to how you can use modeling analysis to derive policy insights. So that's why I would request all the participants to be as interactive as possible. So Pratham, just a question. If I mean, in my presentation there are many sort of questions which I want to ask the participants. What is the best way, in the sense, I know there is a hand raise option there, so should participants raise their hands, or they I'm okay with them interjecting as they want, for efficiency, but whatever way you suggest. Yeah.
Okay. What I would suggest is like let the answers be there in the chat box. They can write in the chat,
Okay.
and then at the end maybe we can have we'll give the everyone right to unmute themselves and they can speak if they want to speak. But
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
middle it might cause some like uncalled for
Okay.
discussion or something like that. We want to avoid
Okay.
that.
Because I mean, my presentation would have a lot of very simple questions, one by one. I think you will see what I mean. So I think typing actually takes a lot of time. That was I was avoiding chat. I thought about it, but typing would
Okay.
take a long time for answering a very simple kind of question. So that's
So
why
in that
maybe.
case, we can unmute and we can unmute everyone. So in
So
case
I think
we
that is
have a
totally
lot of
fine.
disturbance, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
we'll do
yeah.
that.
And what I would request is people, I mean, can mute themselves like from their own side, and whoever wants to speak can unmute. So then it will be easier to sort of manage, I hope. And let us see, if it doesn't work, then we will go back to the other way. Right.
Sure, sure.
Okay, sounds great. So let me start by sharing my screen. Okay, I hope you are able to see my screen now. Hello.
Yeah,
Yes,
your
Vaibhav, we are.
screen is visible.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. I can't see anybody because I'm seeing just my screen as of now. So thank you again for inviting me. The session will be about insights from modeling energy and climate policies. We have over an hour and 20 minutes left. So let me just start. Uh, Let me just go ahead. I work for the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. We are one of the leading policy research institutions in Asia, and we work across many diverse areas of research, ranging from energy access to renewable energy, power sector reforms, industrial sustainability, climate risk adaptation, then technology, energy technologies, finance, climate finance, energy finance, trade. And we have very recently started, almost a year back, a Center for Energy Finance, because finance is something extremely important in the global energy discourse now. I lead the low carbon pathways work at the council. And that's what I'm going to talk about, which is essentially looking at the longer term evolution, how energy systems, climate systems would evolve in the long term, and that is the kind of work I do. So let me just start with I'll talk about three big themes today. And as I said earlier, this is not a modeling training session, but this is more an insight kind of session. How do we derive insights from models? So I'll first talk about international climate politics and how is it linked to models. Star labeling program, many of you might have heard about it. And finally, India's long-term decarbonization strategy. Now, all of these things are very closely aligned with energy and energy scenarios. All of these things, these three bigger topics, and I will continue to sort of talk about energy throughout these. Uh, so let me first talk about international climate politics. So my first question to all of the participants here would be, how many of you or could anybody tell me about Montreal Protocol? Have you guys heard about it? What is it about? The Montreal Protocol. Any answers?
I guess it is for the by IUCN. It is developed for
Mhm,
International Union for Conservation of Nature. That is
mhm,
it's all about, I guess.
mhm. Okay. And what is it focus? Like, what is the focus of Montreal Protocol? Any
So
idea?
I think it's about emissions, hydrocarbon emissions, probably.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, okay, okay. That's kind of close, but not exact. But thank you so much for your response. Any other responses? Okay. So I take
Depletion
it
of
that
ozone layer.
ozone layer. Okay. Okay.
I
Great. Great.
think save the nature.
Okay. Okay. So great. I think two of the participants have already mentioned Montreal Protocol is about the ozone layer, right? So I think in early 1970s, scientists discovered a big hole over the ozone layer, and then the world came together because they were obviously it was not a good thing we were doing to the environment. So people came together, scientists and countries came together basically on the United Nations platform, and then after many years of negotiations, I think in mid 1980s, around mid 1980s, I think in 1987 to be precise, they uh, created something called Montreal Protocol, which everybody, all countries in the world agreed to, which was essentially about healing the ozone layer. So that was the Montreal Protocol, right? Now, how many of you have heard about hydrofluorocarbons? So let me ask a simple question. That where are HFCs used? It is probably more relevant for our debate. Where are HFCs used, and what are these, and where are they used? Yeah, any answers?
Refrigerants.
Refrigerants.
Refrigerants, sir, probably in refrigeration units.
Okay, okay, exactly. So people who have got a background in chemistry would definitely know this. Hydrofluorocarbons are essentially refrigerants. So what does it mean? Where are these used? Like these are refrigerants. So where are refrigerants used? Uh, uh, they are essentially used in our air conditioners and refrigerators. Basically, anywhere where you require cooling, you would require a refrigerant, right? So hydrofluorocarbons are a refrigerant, but what is important is they are the set of gases or set of refrigerants that replaced the earlier refrigerants that depleted the ozone layer, right? And that is what is the link. So basically, Montreal Protocol, when the Montreal Protocol was formulated, could please everybody mute themselves? I am hearing a buzzing sound in the background. So in the Montreal Protocol, the set of gases that were there, they were called hydrochlorofluorocarbons, HCFCs, if some of you have known. So they were earlier CFCs, which is chlorofluorocarbons. From that, the world moved to HCFCs, which is hydrochlorofluorocarbons. Now, these set of gases were very damaging to the ozone layer, and that's why the Montreal Protocol was formed. Now, as a technology alternative, the world discovered after innovation and all something called hydrofluorocarbons, which was not with where the ozone depletion potential was very low, right? But so the world started transitioning under the Montreal Protocol to hydrofluorocarbons, right? Now, hydrofluorocarbons, why again it started coming into the debate was because later we discovered that HFCs are what is known as super greenhouse gases. So they were actually very bad from the global warming point of view. So now that's a very interesting, international transition that we try to solve the ozone problem, and unknowingly we enter into a global warming problem, which is because of HFCs. Now in India, why it was important, because now there were efforts on the United Nations platform that how do you reduce now HFCs? So first we reduce under Montreal Protocol HCFCs, then how do you reduce HFCs? Which is the next step. And India, and as I said, see the title of the slide again. Can I request everybody to mute themselves? I think some people are already on unmute. Uh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. So the title of the slide is International Climate Politics. And why international climate politics is important, because in the ozone debate all the countries have to come together, in the climate debate all the countries have to come together. So that there's a lot of interesting international geopolitics, climate politics that happens, and models have a very important role to play in this international climate politics. So what happened was, because HFCs were known as super greenhouse gases, uh, a lot of people started saying that HFC would contribute to around 15 to 20% of India's total GHG emissions by 2050. Now 15 to 20% is a huge number. Because of this, there was a lot of international pressure by many countries, especially European countries and US, on India, that India should be reducing HFCs. The Indian companies and Indian government was very uncomfortable because they were just the process of transitioning away from HCFCs towards HFCs. So under any of these international, treaties like Montreal Protocol or Kyoto Protocol, the developed countries always have to make the first move, and the developing countries follow after 15, 20 years. So the US and Europe had already transitioned into HFCs in a big way. So they were using HFCs for like 15 years. India was just transitioning. And when you are transitioning, when the companies are ready, the investments have been made, suddenly this another new thing comes which says that you have to again transition away from HFCs. So it created a sort of a very bad situation for the Indian company, very tough situation. And the most important motivation was this particular third sentence that I've written here, that HFC emissions would be 15-20% of India's total GHG emissions in 2050, and it's a huge number. So all countries, including India, will have to transition as soon as possible, even away from HFCs. Now, let me ask you this question. Any idea where this number would have come from? This 15-20% number, what would have been the basis of this number? Any responses to that? Yeah, any random responses? Like what kind of analysis is required to arrive at these kind of numbers?
Greenhouse effect.
Okay. But greenhouse effect is, it's a more of a concept, right? And which is obviously it is very related to this particular sentence. But what in terms of analysis needs to be done to arrive at this kind of number?
Temperature rise.
Okay. And how
Or
temperature is?
Or rather CO2.
Okay.
Global warming.
Yeah. But how would you find it out? So see, please, I mean, that is again, I want to highlight, this is very interesting set of responses, but all the responses are very, kind of molecule related responses. In the sense, we know what is the global warming potential of a carbon molecule versus a HFC molecule, right? So these are molecule level responses. In the global or international climate politics, uh, what matters is the macro level, like country kind of trends. So it is not about one HFC molecule. It is about all the HFC molecules when come together, what is going to be their cumulative impact, right? So that is because it's the macro which sort of overall addition that matters, not the individual molecule in itself, right? So all the responses are valid, but they are micro kind of responses rather than the macro level. So at the macro level, see in this sentence, I say India's total GHG emissions. So it is not really, HFC versus CO2 molecule, but it is India's total GHG, greenhouse gas emissions, right? So again, I mean, any further responses on how would you arrive at, if I have to ask you that, tell me what are going to be India's 2050 emissions, how would you arrive at it?
Increase in buying ACs and refrigerators.
Okay. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
analysis,
Sorry?
forecasting analysis of
Using,
Forecasting. Okay.
using
Okay.
green gas in the refrigeration.
Okay.
or increasing the sea level or ocean coast level.
Aerosol propellants.
Okay.
It could be, sir. It could be extrapolation of past trend or present trend. Then we can find out
Air
what
pollution
what
index.
will be happening. Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's a very good set of responses. So the first thing I would say, I mean, if you guys could please mute yourself again. Thank you. So the first thing I want to say that for, this kind of longer term emissions, one needs a modeling kind of analysis, macro level model, so, and I will talk about it in a bit. But what was very interesting to me when I started entering into this, Sorry, guys, could you please mute yourself? Hello?
No, Vasant.
Yeah, could you please mute yourself, everybody? Uh, yeah. So what is very interesting is that when I started entering into this debate or HFC emissions, this is what I've heard everywhere in every conference in India, where US guys and European guys was coming and saying exactly the same thing. And I started finding what is the base of it, what is the source of this number, because this was used in the politics, international climate politics, to pressurize India, right? That India's HFC emission would be huge. What was most interesting to me was there was no source of it. What was very interesting to me was there was no source of this number, and I was very surprised that how come that without any source people are talking about this number. And what I realized later, that there was a research paper, very famous research paper, but there was only one research paper by one of the very famous scientists, which looked at developing countries and developed world together, I mean in separate categories. And it said, it concluded that in developing world it will be around 10%. That's what nothing for India basically, but for the developing world. Now from there, because of all of this is also politics, some negotiators, some scientists, what they said, that it is 10% for developing country. India is growing at a faster rate, so India ke liye it will definitely be 15 to 20%. Basically no base, no source, but a number was out of the air derived for India, but it had some link to some other longer term modeling that was done. And this number, which was just sort of derived out of thin air, was being used heavily in international climate politics to pressurize the Indian government, to just mitigate HFC emissions as soon as possible. And there was no source. So this question, how would you estimate India's long-term HFC emission? Now, this is the question we took upon ourselves because there was no other source, and this number was being often repeated. So we said, okay, then let us look at India's long-term HFC emissions. So what kind of methodologies are used? And this is a quick snapshot. I'm not going to get into details. People who are interested, can obviously let me know. Now, as I said, there are many such models. First of all, so this is one of the models that I use called Global Change Analysis Model. Now, recently it has been called analysis. Earlier, it had some other name. It is Global Change Analysis Model. It is a global model with 32 regions. It was set up at IIM Ahmedabad. It is extensively published in high impact journals and very important part of IPCC assessments, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Assessment, and it is one of in-house models of my organization CW. Now, what is this model about? If you could just look at the boxes, just a very quick snapshot. It models energy demand of end use sectors. By end use sector, it means industrial sector, residential sector, transport sector, agricultural sector. So it says, okay, when we are sitting, let's say, if we are sitting in IIT Roorkee, right? It is one institution, which is one educational institution. When we take all the educational institutions, all the commercial institutions of the country, commercial in the sense educational, hospitals, hotels, everything that is non-residential building sector, all of these together, we know that how lighting is used in these institutions, how air conditioning is used, how different services are used in hotels, cooking is also used. So we try to understand the present macro level behavior, and then say in the future, long term future, what are the different directions in which it could grow. So it is not forecasting. So a term was used, forecasting, which is used in many analysis, but only for a very limited time period, because forecasts beyond 10 years don't really make a lot of sense. So what we do is called scenario analysis. So we say, what if Indian economy grows at 8% versus if it grows at 5%? And based on all of these alternatives, how do we see economic activity going in, let's say, hotels, and our different kind of institutions, and what does it mean for the energy demand so this is end use sectors. Then the dark blue box is about energy supply. uh, I- Sorry, I still hear a lot of background noise. If I don't know, somebody's on call, appears to me. uh, so if so the dark blue box is about energy supply, where we say, okay, the energy demand is being supplied by electricity, coal, oil, different fuels, right? And then it's like the yellow box is more about regional GDP, population. So basically, population and incomes are the driving forces, underlying drivers. which lead to people buying cars, people buying air conditioners, using electricity, buying more bigger homes, basically all the economic activity. And then based on then we get a sense of greenhouse gas emissions. So for HFC debate, we simply say, okay, how would people start buying air conditioners? Because that's the biggest refrigerant consumer, residential air conditioners, commercial air conditioners, and also air conditioners in the mobile sector, which is cars and all, and refrigeration sector, commercial refrigeration, all those kind of things wherever HFCs are used, right? So this is the kind of thing modeling we do, long-term modeling, to try to answer this particular question, which I just talked about. So what did we find? So as I said, the global number that was being circulated around and around was 15 to 20%. And we initiated efforts to understand how would HFC emissions grow. And this is what we found. So we basically, you could see all the sectors. We look at each of the sectors separately within one framework only, and try to understand their growth drivers, and then say, okay, if there are right now in India, there are around 20 million air conditioners. I'm talking about residential air conditioners. Now, each air conditioner has a particular refrigerant charge, which is around 350 grams of a refrigerant. That refrigerant has a global warming potential. Now, theoretically, if the refrigerant does not leak throughout the life, then there is no global warming impact. But all of you in India, living in India, you would be knowing that, generally, especially in larger cities, refrigerant leaks happen on an average of every fourth year, at least. Every fourth year, the gas would have leaked in many places, not in smaller towns, but many bigger towns where their pollution is there, because pollution is a big factor. Uh, Air conditioner leakages happen, and because of that, gas again needs to be refilled. So there are many parameters that we take underlying, assumptions that, okay, what is the amount of refrigerant, how many times it is leaked during the lifetime of an air conditioner, which is maybe 10 years or 12 years. And with the help of this, if there are, in 2050 there are 100 million ACs or 150 million ACs, depending on the underlying growth rate, this is going to be the, simple multiplicative kind of global warming impact from this sector. So this is how we create, we do this kind of analysis and say, well, for example, our analysis says that commercial buildings, because the refrigeration and air conditioners is probably going to be the biggest source of HFC emissions. But again, this is all sectoral. What was the bigger picture? In the bigger picture, what we found was HFC emissions are estimated to be 5.4% of India's total CO2 and HFC emissions in 2050, which is essentially most of the GHGs are CO2 and HFCs, and there are some methane also. Now, but energy sector related emissions, our number was 5.4. Compared to this, what the US guys were telling us was 15% to 20%. So suddenly, when we just published this report, Indian government started using it heavily, because obviously now, earlier there was no source of the 15-20%, but we just have to listen, because many times it is believed that that scientists in the developed world would have done this research, so there is some basis. But in this case, at least, there was no basis, and this was the first study in recent times which looked at the details of all the sectors with very clear, transparent set of assumptions, and the model is one of the most widely used model across the world. So this basically became something like a very dependable kind of result. And we had discussed all this, had came through a very intensive stakeholder engagement process. So we engaged with the Indian industry in a big way for getting inputs to the key things like what is the refrigerant charge rate, what is the potential leakage rate based on earlier research, industrial engagement. And after all this, ultimately this was the number. And for any modeling analysis, it is also extremely important to start getting a sense of the sensitivities. Sensitivity simply means that, okay, this was maybe a 6% growth scenario. What about if the economic growth moves to 7.5%? What if it only is 4% across a period of 30 years? But what we found that though absolute emissions will be different, the share of emissions will still be around 5.5%. So because when the higher economic growth is there, even CO2 emissions will grow, right? So everything grows or everything goes down, but the share of HFC emissions is 5.5%. So as I said, in the international geopolitics, now this became a very important tool. And this is when, I'm a researcher, and many of us are researchers here on the call. We know the power of research, but this is something which sort of firsthand we observed very closely. And I was advising the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, the ozone cell, which represents the government of India in the international negotiation, the Montreal Protocol, very closely. And that's why I've been in many committees for the ozone cell, which does this kind of work, which is because of largely this work that we did, which was hugely influential. And then, of course, this kind of changed the course of the global negotiations. So till that time, all the US countries and everybody was kind of, forcing India, pressurizing India to reduce HFC emissions because it will be 15-20%. After this result, after India started pushing back, ultimately the Kigali Amendment happened under the Montreal Protocol in 2016. In the Kigali Agreement, they they had three groups of countries. So India was basically placed in the third group of countries. So we get some additional 10 years for transition, just because we showed that India's emissions, irrespective of our growth scenarios, they are not going to be 15-20%. So obviously HFC emissions need to be mitigated. Nobody is denying it, but the urgency that was being shown, that it has to be done in the next 5 years, next 10 years, clearly India is not going to grow immensely, because China's is something which is already a very high rate of income, 4 times India's income, very high rate of AC penetration, more than 90%. India's residential air conditioning penetration as of now is around 7%. So it's very, very low. It is going to grow phenomenally, but a large growth will happen probably around after 2030, when we suddenly kind of cross a threshold. And till then, we still have a lower kind of growth rate, and and the schedule that was drawn by India for phase down was looking at these kind of numbers, that what are the, what is going to be the potential growth across sectors, and based on that, what how will we be able to maximize emission mitigation of HFCs while minimize the cost of the economy, right? So that's why this is sort of the process that we used. uh, and this was a report that we released, long term HFC emissions, where the graph I showed you was a part of this report. Again, we have published journal papers also. We had another partner report with the same time. So basically there was a part 1 and part 2, which looked at the cost of transition. So that is also very important for a developing country. The developed world is kind of much more richer, but a developing country have to be very cognizant of the cost of a car. So if a new HFC system increases the cost of a car by 10,000 rupees, the industry actually never wants that to happen. For example, you must have known about the BS6 debate. The BS6 has suddenly increased the cost of a car by, I think, around 20-25,000 or so. And so which the industry obviously is not happy about, but that is the cost we need to bear as a society for environmental protection, for lower air pollution, right? Something similar for the HFCs also. Expected increase in cost of car, of cost of air conditioners would happen, because we are getting better in terms of environmental technology. But what is important is to get a sense of how big these costs will be, and that is what we sort of attempted. After all this analysis is, as I said, the course of the negotiations, international climate negotiations, was changed. And the Kigali Amendment created three countries, three different groupings. And for the first time, China and India were separated in the group. They were kept under different groupings, because on the basis of our research, then we also did some research on China, and showed why it does not make sense to group China and India, because China is already very high in terms of emissions. So we kind of provided a differentiated sort of approach, which was finally accepted by the negotiators. And this is sort of, as I said, how modeling was used to influence policy, in a big way. So let me just take a pause here. If you guys have any questions as of now, because there are other two things that I want to cover, but happy to hear if there are any questions as of now on this particular, modeling influencing the international climate negotiations and politics discourse. Okay. So I'm assuming that there are no questions as of now, but please feel free to ask questions later as as you deem fit. Now let me move to the second sort of topic that I'm going to talk about. So it's a shorter one, but it is still very interesting. So how many of you have heard about star labeling program? Assuming many of you would have heard about the star labeling program. Could anybody tell me what it is about? What does it try to do?
to quantify the energy efficiency, and it is given by Bureau of Energy Efficiency in India.
Okay, thank you. Any other responses? Sorry.
Reduce the energy consumption.
Hmm.
The effectiveness of the cooling.
Sorry, could you repeat yourself?
The effectiveness of the cooling.
Effectiveness. Okay, okay, great. Yeah. Any other answers?
Hello, yes, sir. Sir,
Yeah,
it's a kind of a certification to inform perspective as a purchases that product is highly efficient or its category something like.
Okay, okay, thank you. And in what products have you seen star labeling? If I could just quickly follow up.
Yes, sir. The refrigerator, AC.
Okay, refrigerator,
AC.
ACs.
Most of the electrical
AC.
appliances,
Yes, yeah,
sir.
most of the yes, sir.
Okay, okay. And what
Where
are these labels?
conservation of energy is less.
Okay, and
Conservation
what
of
are these
energy is
labels?
less.
And what are these labels like?
From 1 to 5.
1 to
Stars.
5.
Stars,
Okay.
stars.
Yeah. So it's a very simple program, and as all of you, and it's a very famous, one of the most successful programs of the government of India, which is about the star labeling program, right? So they started labeling, I think in 2010 or so, around that, they started labeling air conditioners and refrigerators. Then fans is actually under the voluntary star labeling scheme, but most famously, it is for air conditioners and refrigerators, is what, because that has been the longest history, so to speak, right? So again, this is a star labeling program. Now, my question is, how does it work? What does it change? So as a consumer, now you know that, okay, this AC is 5-star, this AC is 3-star. How does it change things, Now, just because you know that this is more energy efficient, would you buy it?
Just like inverter ACs.
Sorry?
Inverter ACs.
Okay.
That compressor runs constantly. It doesn't shut out.
Mhm.
So the initial consumption of the unit is less in that case. So that is inverter AC.
Okay, so this is again, I mean, thank you for the response. I think this is a correct response, but this is a technical part of it, right? The star labeling program or any government of India program is a from a consumer engagement perspective, right? So the ACs were still there. The AC technology was always there, even before 2010. But the star label was not there. So the AC technology has not changed. Only the now inverter ACs started coming, so the technology has changed, right? But the labeling program has a different objective, right? So I'm just my question is more about how does the labeling program work, which is a different answer from the the technically how does the AC work. So the question is, how does the star labeling program work? So any responses for that?
I think it usually compares different with different efficiencies and measures that how much energy is saved from more efficient product for getting out the same amount of work done from it. And then it categorizes it with 1-star, 2nd-star, 3-star, 4-star, and all that. So it basically measures the efficiency with regard to the amount of work done by a product clients.
Yeah. So definitely, I think that is the correct answer.
It's an energy audit. It's an energy audit.
Okay.
It's an energy audit of the appliances.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So basically, these are correct responses.
Yes.
That. Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, I can't hear.
Let's wait for 2 more minutes.
Anyway, so let me just proceed. So basically, how does it work, right? That was the question. So the answers are right that this is sort of this kind of labels the energy efficiency of a particular kind of AC. So it says like a 5-star AC is much more energy efficient, but it also gives some additional numbers that this is how much you would save, if you run it for these hours as compared to, let's say, a 3-star AC, something like that, right? What is very important to know for any policy, because this is a policy kind of session, that policy seeks to change the behavior of economic actors. So that is the whole objective of policy. What it means is, in this particular case of star labeling, the actors, economic actors, are essentially people like you and me. You know, it's like we are buying air conditioners.
Ma'am,
We are
Tansil will not be joining.
sorry.
Okay. Still, Nasir is not here, and Subhash is
It is better if you unmute everyone, sir. Please mute everyone.
Subhash is also here. Okay, so let me start. I think two people are not here yet, so I don't know who are there. Tanzil and Ujjwal is not here. So that's okay, good.
Sir, host can mute everyone.
What was I doing in the last class?
Yes, I've muted everyone. Vaibhav, you can please unmute yourself and continue.
Hello. Sorry, I dropped off. I hope you guys can hear me now.
Yes, Vaibhav, we can hear you. Please continue.
Yes, sorry about that. There is some issue with the internet, looks like. Yeah. Anyways, let me reshare my screen. Okay, so I was talking about energy efficiency, and the star labeling program. The way it works is it gives some information to consumers like you and me to you know make changes in our decision making, and that is what sort of any policy program seeks to achieve. Yeah. Now I will connect it to modeling. Now, why am I connecting? Why am I even I bringing this up in this modeling kind of discussion? So you see, this is energy consumption by service in India. Now, this is a research we published long back, I think in 2013 or so, that this looks at the longer term so energy consumption by service. And you could see cooling is becoming very big, right? And appliances are becoming very big in this. Appliances simply means it could be fridge, it could be fans, right? Could be computers and all these appliances, which is where is the focus of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency's star labeling program is. Cooling means air conditioners in a big way that is going to impact India's longer term energy consumption. Now, something very interesting when we were doing this particular analysis, and this was back in 2013 or so, we tried to find it, okay, what is going to be the impact of a climate policy or a electricity tax on India's building sector, because you see building sector is very important energy consumer and has emissions, right? And this is what we found. This is very interesting that these two graphs. So the left graph is about what we call as business as usual, final energy in the building sector, right? And the right hand side, we say final energy under a climate policy. Climate policy simply means there is a very high carbon tax on the economy or on the building sector. What is very interesting that we actually saw very little change. So you see, if you look at the two graphs, by and large, the two graphs look very similar. There's not much of a difference, and it sort of kind of confused me, because generally speaking, when we have a strong climate policy, a strong carbon tax, you will see a lot of changes happening in the economy. But at least in the building sector, we actually did not see a lot of change, which kind of confused me. Now, so basically, impact of climate policy was negligible for India's building energy system. At the same time, in the same analysis, then obviously this paper was focused on India, so this had only these graphs. But separately, we did some analysis for China and the US, right, for the same level of carbon tax. There, it was very surprising. The graph of climate policy was actually very different from the graph of BAU. So basically, you could see a lot of change in US building energy systems and China's building energy system when you have a carbon tax. But in India, there was no such change, right? So could anybody make any guess that why is this happening? Like why this kind of behavior we see in India's economy, which is very different from what happened in the US and China's building sector? Any random responses, anything that comes to your mind?
We are building, we are using old technology. We don't design according to the energy sectors. For example, we are wasting so many of energy. For example, we are using today the bricks only, like that. We cannot proper designs. Just uneducatedly we are built whatever the things. Like that, it is, energy is need more. For example, energy only we are not doing. Like that, it will not happen. For example, if you want one area of 1.5 ton, your area, but your the supply of, for example, your utility is 3 ton like that. That is the reason.
Okay. So basically, it's largely you're saying the building energy envelope, building efficiency, building code level of thing. Could you please also connect it to carbon tax? Is it in any way related to carbon tax? Because this result is very specific to a strong climate policy, through a carbon tax, basically, which is an economic instrument. So do you think what you are saying has some relation to carbon tax, or it is something different?
Yes, everything is related to carbon. Why means we are using the electricity, the production of electricity through the carbon even now in India. Most of all the power plant you are using the thermal coal power plant. That is you are related to the carbon emissions. So like that, if you lighting sector we are using more means your carbon utility is more. That is to change over this graph.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Any other responses to this?
It's a carbon credit.
Okay.
Of that place.
Okay. Any other responses?
I think it basically depends on the financials of the country. Like India is like not very much financially backed up, and if we see consumers adopting to a costly product that is more much efficient, then this thing is not much happening in right now compared to China and US. They are adopting new products, more efficient products, and that is possible because there are the people are financially backed up and could upgrade themselves.
Okay, okay. Thank you. So let me give you a hint. You know, my earlier slide was about star labeling appliances, right? So within this, the context of India's star labeling program is what I'm showing this for these particular set of graphs, these questions. So how is this related to the star labeling program? This particular result, that climate policy in India does not impact building sector's energy consumption patterns. So any response that could link this with the star labeling program?
So if we are thinking about highly efficient equipment, then the red portion of graph is going down. That is consumption of electricity.
Very marginally.
Forecast.
Very marginally. See, you are right, it is going down, but you could
Sir.
see it going down marginally only. It is not a drastic difference, right? It's a very small difference, right? So you're right, there is a difference, but very small difference actually. A climate policy would mean actually a huge difference, right? But which is not happening here, which happens in the case of US and China. Okay. Yeah. So let me just come to the answer in the interest of time. So what was very interesting, what we found is about technology substitution possibilities. Now, what does it mean? What do I mean by that? Now, if you look at India's graph, either BAU or climate policy, you see a huge dominance of electricity. All the red is electricity, right? So think about what energy does India's homes use? So you see everything. Cooling is totally air conditioners or coolers, let's say, uh, all electricity based, right? All the appliances, be it refrigerators, everything, computers, TVs, all are electricity based, right? So what is the other big service, other big fuel is LPG or natural gas for cooking. And then in some, poorer households or India's villages, it's traditional biomass, right? But by and large, if you look at apart from cooking services, it's like everything is electricity. So when you have a carbon tax kind of policy, people have no choice to substitute anything. What people will do if electricity becomes very expensive is start reducing their consumption of the same thing, but there are no technology substitution possibilities. But what is the case with US and China? See, these are cold countries. Cold countries simply mean that they require a lot of heating energy. Heating energy, interestingly, is supplied by not just electricity, it is supplied by oil as well as natural gas. So if you look at the same graph for United States or China, you will see probably a lot of oil coming in for heating or gas coming in for heating. Heating needs are actually based on oil or gas, right? The moment you have a climate policy, you see a lot of shift towards electricity, because electricity then you could decarbonize through maybe solar in the electricity production system, right? In India, that possibility is not there. Okay. So India, that possibility is not there. So technology substitution possibilities are extremely important. What the star labeling has done is created technology substitution possibilities. And this is a very important insight that which comes from these kind of modeling efforts. Now, what do I mean by this? It simply means think 10 years back, more than 10 years back, when you went to buy an AC before star labeling was there was no way for any consumer to differentiate between any kind of AC. The only differentiator was a brand. So people used to say that, okay, Hitachi's air conditioner is very good. General's air conditioner is very good, very dependable. But apart from that, we had no idea of either energy efficiency. Everybody knew that ACs consume a lot of electricity. So they're very expensive to operate. That everybody knew. Beyond it, I had no idea whether AC A or AC B, which one is more energy efficient. I had no idea, right? But with the help of star labeling, now the government of India has created technology substitution possibilities. Okay. What does it mean? It simply means now the consumers have a choice to pick between a 3-star AC versus a 5-star AC for a a service, and both the technologies, both 5-star and 3-star, are perfectly substitutable. And that is also very important. They are perfectly substitutable. So basically the cooling that you get from a 3-star AC versus a 5-star AC, they are exactly the same, perfectly substitutable, right? The only difference is one particular technology uses less electricity, other use higher electricity, right? So you could choose one of these perfectly substitutable technologies only because of star leveling. So now after this analysis, then in the next set of analysis, when we found this very interesting insight, we then started creating a high efficiency AC in our models, in our long-term models. Instead of one category of generic category or representation of air conditioners, we started creating categories of high efficiency air conditioners and low efficiency air conditioners. So in India, obviously the market is dominated by 3-star, which we say is a lower efficiency air conditioner. 4 and 5 are higher. And then if you now implement a climate policy or a carbon tax, you could very clearly see a shift from a low efficiency AC to a higher efficiency AC. So this is a very interesting another insight that is coming, that which comes only from this model, very policy relevant insight. And this is sort of how the kind of you and me as economic actors, we behave, we respond to these kind of incentives, these information which is given to us. And policies are help in star leveling is essentially a very consumer focused policy program. It tells you, gives you this information, it helps you make this choice, and helps you create helps you choose between different technologies which was earlier not available at all, right? This is the kind of importance of this policy and this particular modeling insight which is related to this policy. So now let me again pause before moving to the third section of it about India's decarbonization. Only 30 minutes are left now, but any questions or comment on this particular set of insights?
So can I
Yes.
ask that you can replace this electric air condition with solar air conditioning system?
Well, there are technologies available, but they're extremely expensive. But technologies are available. Yeah.
Because as solar water heating is imposed, same way solar air conditioning can be imposed, and the consumption of the electricity can be reduced.
Yes, but solar water heater is, I mean, think about, say, our own homes. For how long do you use a solar water heater versus how long do you use an air conditioner? Right? The air conditioner is used like literally, in the night also it is used when solar is not there, right? So there is also an issue of coupling it with battery, which increases the cost, right? Plus you use it for 8 to 10 hours on an average in summer months especially, right?
Okay.
Heater you use how much? Like 1 hour maybe?
Yeah, in the winter only.
Yeah, in the winter only 1 hour only. So it's that's why solar heater is much more successful in the market compared to solar AC, which anyways a heater is like 10,000 rupees. So solar heater will be 15,000 rupees. That air conditioner is already 40,000, 50,000 rupees. Right? So solar AC would be much more expensive, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So any other questions or comments on this particular insight? Okay. Okay, thank you. So let me then move forward to the third section about India's longer term energy scenarios. How do we see things evolving? So now this particular slide is about India's electricity generation technology outlook. So basically, we run, see, future is inherently uncertain. So on the three different colors you see is about high economic growth, medium
Sorry to
economic growth.
interrupt, but your
Yeah.
slides
Sorry.
are not visible.
Oh, my slide are not visible. I hope can others see my slide, because I mean, it is
Yes,
showing.
screen is not
No,
visible.
no, Vaibhav, we can't see your slides actually.
Very strange. Okay, let me just stop sharing and see again. Let's try to. Can you see my slide now? Hello?
No, sir. No, sir. No.
So what do I need to do? Because I have started sharing it again, and it actually asked me stop sharing.
Maybe you can try sharing the whole screen if the slide option is not working.
Okay, let me try. I think there is only one option it is showing me. It is not
Okay.
giving me many options.
Okay.
And I'm clicking it. Okay, so it says open share tray. That's what I'm. So I hope till now you were able to look at my slides, right?
Yeah, it was going fine. Till reset.
Okay, so now it says screen share, which is desktop or window. So I'm clicking it. Then your entire screen is what I'm choosing. Okay, and then I say share. Can you see anything?
Not yet.
No,
Let
not
wait
yet.
for a couple of seconds.
Okay, that's very strange because it is on my side, it is showing that, uh, it is teammicrosoft.com is sharing your screen. So, okay. Uh, maybe what we could also do is, you already have a slide, my set of slides, right? I've sent it.
Yes,
Rhythm.
I'll request Rhythm to share it.
Maybe
Professor
that.
Rhythm, can you can you do it?
Okay, so I'll probably stop sharing my screen. I don't know why.
Okay, so just give me a minute. I'll ask Professor Rhythm to do the same. Just give me
Sure,
a
sure.
minute. Hey, Professor Rhythm would be sharing the slides soon.
Okay, thank you. Let me stop sharing from my side. I think you guys wouldn't have been able to see it yet. Have you shared it yet?
Yeah, so just give us a couple of minutes.
Sure,
So
sure.
I'll be
No
sharing
problem.
the slides.
Yeah. So let me keep on talking while you're sharing.
Yeah, sure,
Okay.
sure. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So I'm sure all the participants here would know about the solar debate, in the sense that India is progressing hugely in terms of its solar energy. Our solar energy ambitions are very ambitious, and because of which there is a larger debate that when will solar start replacing coal in India's electricity system, because the cost of solar have come down very rapidly in the last 5 years. It is actually very competitive, but only when you start getting larger solar, then you also need balancing, grid balancing, because as we know, solar is an intermittent technology. It is not there available for 24 hours. So we need battery backup systems, or we need some backup natural gas systems, some sort of systems to smoothen the intermittent resource, that is solar or wind, right? So that is what is the big debate is, that when will solar replace, and there could be many different scenarios. So what we did an analysis of almost 200 plus scenarios, where we looked at the different cost trajectories, because cost is very important. Solar will not come in just because we like solar will come in if it is more cost competitive with coal, right? So that's why it will come in. Yeah, thank you, Dinam. I can see the slide. If you could go to the earlier slides. Yeah, this one.
Is this one fine?
Yeah, this is the one. Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So as said that we did multiple scenarios, 200 plus. Could you please get into the presentation mode? Yeah, thank you. So we did a set of scenarios across 200 plus scenarios. We looked at different economic growth. Within each of the economic growth, there were around 70 plus scenarios. We just looked at the cost combinations. There are many different technologies, nuclear, gas, wind, solar, coal, based on so many different like critical uncertainties. Which ones do we see grow in a big way, right? And what we found that uh, even if the cost of solar is going to come down rapidly, which simply means the role of solar in India's longer term power sector is going to increase hugely. So the graph on the right side which says solar, you could see that solar, even the minimum solar, is actually a very fast pace of growth. And if you go to the most ambitious scenario, that is even more ambitious. But what is interesting that coal actually does not peak under any scenario, which was very interesting to me, to us for our research, that even the cost of solar is coming down rapidly, only because of intermittency, some storage system cost, that other tack on cost. Coal is still, the pace of coal additions definitely slows, that is very clear. But in India's energy system, coal does not go out, because a lot of debate in energy policy, in power systems policy, is about coal versus solar. And we don't think, given the current best information, that coal will go down in a big way unless some drastic things happen, which as of now we don't have any information. If whenever the information comes, these kind of analysis is always updated. Okay, so this is what our outlook for the longer term is. Next slide, please. So India's industrial sector emissions are going to be critical. Yeah, next please. So if you look at this particular graph, this is a longer term evolution of emissions across different sectors. And this is again the kind of modeling that we do. We look at the longer term. And if we look at India's three sectors, you see in the electricity, industry, and transportation and building sector. The industry is the red one, and we can see the share of industry is emissions growing in the future. So what is the reason behind it? Now if you go to the, please press next. So if you look at the share of electricity industrial sector in India's debate, electricity is actually almost 50% as of now, but the share will go down. Industrial sector is actually, just for a second, I'm getting some call from. Sorry. Yeah. So basically, industrial sector emissions currently are less than 20%, but they are in terms of, 25% if you include all the non-energy related emissions, the feedstock related emissions also, they're expected to grow to around 1/3. And why this happens is, when you look at the right graph here, and please press next. Yeah. So the fuel mix is extremely important. And this is also kind of very interesting. Next, please. So you will see another arrow here. Yeah. So you see in India's industrial sector, even the fuel consumption mix is largely fossil dependent. Now this is, so the question is, to the group, why is India's industrial sector so fossil intensive? Why don't we see electricity share in a big way? Either now or in the long run. So currently the share of electricity in India's industrial energy use is around 18%. So 80+% is fossil energy. A large part of it is coal. What is the reason for it? Which leads to all these emissions. So anybody could tell me what is the reason for this?
Highly efficient.
Electricity is highly efficient.
No, if you use fossil fuels, then it's highly efficient to generate electricity.
No, this is industrial sector. See, the question is, in industrial sector, let's say all the industrial manufacturing units that we have, right? So in India's manufacturing sector, we use 80% plus is fossil energy directly, like coal or oil or gas. Only 17-18% is electricity that is used there. Like for example, if a automobile sector has a plant, car manufacturing plant, that plant will be using electricity based processes. But if you look at the larger industrial sector in India, 80%, more than 80% is directly use fossil energy, right, rather than electricity. So the question is, what is the reason for that? Any answers?
Sir, actually, energy demand for heating is much more than the normal energy demand for equipments driven by electricity. That's why I think the fossil fuel based energy requirement for industrial sector is more than the electricity demand.
But there can't be electricity based heating.
It is costly. It is expensive.
Okay, and why is it expensive?
Because we are converting high grade energy into low grade energy, while when we are burning coal and other fossil fuels, then just we are creating a low grade energy heat simply.
Okay, okay. So that's perfect. I think that is a right answer, right? It is costly. Now let me ask you just a quick follow-up. What is it is costly because of you can do the conversion process, no doubt about it. But what is the policy angle here? Is there a reason why even the base electricity is more expensive than fossil electricity? If let's say forget about heating applications where you need to convert, right? Let's talk about the non-heating applications of fuels in the industrial sector. Would you say electricity there is more expensive or less expensive or equal? Any idea about that?
It is, but it should be continuous process plant. If you see automobile plant, that continuity of the supply of the electricity should be there.
So continuity, I mean, let's say it is continuous.
English grammar.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Okay. So let me give an answer. So I think that point made about heating and all a very valid point. But even for non-heating application where the conversion does not happen, electricity is actually much more expensive. And what is the reason for that? The reason is very interesting. That I hope all of you know. I mean, just reading newspapers, the electricity prices for households is such a big political issue, right? I think everybody will know it. If you see elections in Delhi, I'm sitting in Delhi, which is a very high income state, and electricity prices for household is one of the key election promises. What does it mean? It means that in India's energy policy, affordability has been a very important concern, because of which residential electricity is cross subsidized. And who needs to bear the cost of it? It is the industrial sector, which is another very important insight related to India's energy policy, this cross subsidy architecture. And in fact, the cross subsidy architecture is not just for India. Many other countries, like let's say Japan, they also have a cross subsidy, but their cross subsidy is in the opposite side, which simply means sorry, there is a lot of background noise coming.
Host, kindly mute everybody. Host.
Yeah. So basically, there is a lot of even in Japan, cross subsidy is there, but it's on the opposite side. What does it mean? It means the Japanese government subsidizes the industrial electricity, and people like you and me in the residential sector, they have to pay much more for electricity. Now, why is that the case? Because one of the important policy objectives is industrial competitiveness, because of which electricity is cheaper, right? In India, it's completely the opposite. Affordability is an important element of the policy, because of which people like you and me pay cheaper electricity, much cheaper than the generation cost, and not just generation, basically generation and transmission cost together. We pay much cheaper than that. The industrial sector has to bear the brunt, which is why you see this industrial graph, which is why, I mean, it is completely fossil dependent. And in the future, even though electricity share will grow up, well, from 17-18%, how much will it grow? It can grow to maybe 30% or so in the next 30-35 years. But still, emissions are going to be, 70% is going to be fossil. And this is another important thing to be noted, which has implications for India's energy and climate policy. Next slide, please. Hello. Yeah, next slide. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. So now we just talk about, well, if in this scenario, if you look at India's longer term emissions, and this is again, I'm talking about the, insights again, let's focus there. This is all results come from modeling kind of analysis. But if India wants to decarbonize, right? What are the different options it has got? So the BAU simply says, well, when we continue growing our emissions, business as usual in the long term, right? But then what if the country wants to reduce emissions for achieving a 2-degree kind of scenario as per the Paris Agreement? It has different options. The red line here says what if we peak in 2030 and then go down? The yellow line says, okay, what if we peak in 2040 and then go down in a big way? So again, these are alternative pathways that are available for the country, but each pathway has its implications. For example, the 2030 would mean India would have to reduce or drastically change its energy systems from 2030 onwards, right? So no more emissions beyond 2030, only decline. For 2040, it means we get a 10-year extra time, but the pace of emission decline after that. So you see the slope of the yellow line versus the red line. The slope of the yellow line is very high compared to the red one, which simply means that the pace of emission reductions, if we wait till 2040, it has to be much, much higher as compared to the other one, right? So these are again options available in front of the country. If we are not able to do any of this, it simply means that, well, our emissions will be somewhere between, the BAU line and the red or the yellow line. But it will be much higher than what the 2-degree or the Paris Agreement requires countries to do. So, and this has, and whichever pathway we choose has implications for India's long-term energy outlook and energy scenarios. A 2030 or a 2040 cap would simply mean maybe no more coal power plants, because any coal power plant will become stranded very soon. So stranded assets is a very important part, because then NTPC, all the money it has invested, it goes down the drain because it becomes a stranded assets. But again, these choices have important policy implications. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the pace of transformation, if you have to achieve either a 2030 cap, right, or a 2040, what are the changes that we need in the energy systems? Now, one big change is the electrification of end use systems. Sorry, the first let me talk about the electricity sector. Here you see in this particular graph, the orange bar is solar. So you see almost like a 80% dependent of India's electricity system on solar. So it could be solar plus storage, it will be solar backed by natural gas, whatever it is, but huge dependence of India's electric system on solar energy if you want to achieve a 2-degree kind of target. So that's first big insight, that the electricity system has to change in a big way. The next, please. Next, yeah. The second big insight, the electricity share of the end use sectors has to increase. And the third insight is the energy demand has to decline. Basically, energy efficiency has a very important role to play, that we have to reduce household need to use much more energy efficient appliances. Industrial sector needs to be much more energy efficient. Our vehicles transport has to be much more energy efficient. So energy demand declines, but more importantly, electricity share has to increase. So we need to have many more electricity vehicles. Now, it could be electricity vehicles, or it could be other form of low carbon vehicles. For example, right now, hydrogen is also coming up in a big way in the debate. So it could be hydrogen vehicles, but the larger point is we have to move away from fossil. And electrification of transport sector is going to be important. Our building sector is already electrified in a big way, which I showed in one of the earlier graphs. But industrial sector also has to, become much more electrified. That is something critical. If we are not able to do these kind of changes, well, it simply means that we won't be able to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. And the Paris Agreement kind of, larger United Nations agreements, that is why it is said they have significant implications of the energy systems across the world and for different countries. Yeah. And you see non-fossil energy capacity increased to 98% in 2050. So it's a huge, basically fossil almost goes out from the electricity system by 2050. Next, please. Next. Okay, thank you. So this is my last slide. Okay, I think could you go back to the last slide, please? Yeah, thank you. So this is my last slide. This simply says, well, for India, whenever we talk about energy and climate policy, the different linkages with many other goals are very important. The sustainable development goals are very important. For example, electricity access is something very important for the country. Same as the affordability of electricity, jobs. India is a water constrained country. It is a land constrained country. So whenever we make choices, policy choices, we cannot just think about a climate low carbon systems. We have to think about all many different parameters, many different objectives, right? And this is what is the slide shows, that if we go from a business as usual or a reference scenario to a carbon emission, low carbon scenario kind of thing, what is going to be the impact on these many different parameters? So you could see the per capita emissions, which is the first row. It reduces drastically, definitely, because that is the objective under the cap 2030 scenario, which is the low carbon scenario. uh, Electricity access is actually not hit in a big way, because electricity is something important. We have to find affordable ways to provide electricity to many people. But see, India's income in the long term is going to grow huge. So if we are a much richer nation, a slight increase in the cost of electricity will not matter much. So that this thing will change, drastically, in 20 2050, which is the longer term. There are much more jobs actually in the solar sector. So the value chain of solar has many more jobs, which is a very positive thing pushing, and that's why the government of India is pushing solar in a big way, just because of the job creation potential. When we have a lot more solar, the water footprint is also low. I remember, I think around 2 years back, I was speaking at an NTPC conference, and I was speaking on water energy nexus at the NTPC conference, because we also work on water energy nexus. What was very interesting is one very senior boss of NTPC stood up and said after the presentation that 20 years back, whenever NTPC thought about a power plant, they never even thought about water. It was like, water will be there, so they never thought about it. Now it is becoming one of the most important concerns. So NTPC is feeling the heat, because in the last 10 years, if we just read newspapers, the water related conflicts with, I think there was Coca-Cola plant in Tamil Nadu, some other uh, uh, manufacturing plants which need water, because manufacturing needs a lot of water. So these conflicts are growing in India, and electricity also needs a lot of water. But solar panels, especially PV, they actually don't need a lot of water. This is another solar technology called CSP, which is as of now much more costly. But CSP actually needs a lot of water. But as of now, we are going in a big way towards PV technology, photovoltaic technology, which reduces the water consumption. So that is something very positive. Something which is very negative, a very interesting trade-off is about land. Now, land acquisition has been a big issue throughout. I mean, you must be knowing, for manufacturing, for whichever uh, you know uh, investment we talk about, land acquisition has always been a critical stumbling thing for all of us. And solar has a much bigger land footprint, and that is a big difference. That is going to be a challenge for us. If we want to achieve our solar ambitions, we have to somehow find land for it, or somehow square these things. That's why we are going in areas where there is like wasteland, or it is desert land, which has got its own share of problems. But these are the interesting trade-offs. So these are synergies and they are trade-offs in a low carbon scenario. All of these have important implications for India's long-term energy policy and climate policy, right? So let me just conclude here if there are any questions. But three big things I talked about was international politics, climate politics, geopolitics, where modeling has been used heavily. Then I talked about domestic energy efficiency, star labeling policies, and the key insights that come from modeling. And finally, this kind of insights, which are about trade-offs with different systems, or different sectors. What kind of transition pathways do we need to look for a long term for achieving, Paris goals or decarbonization, and India's energy policy goals. So these are some of the insights that come on. I mean, just for demonstration, I've showed in today's discussion. There are many other, in fact, we keep on analyzing different policies in these kind of frameworks, analytical frameworks, to influence, government of India's policies. And we have, I mean, one of the key part of our job is to engage with different ministries, be it MOFCC, MNRE, Ministry of Power, Ministry of Railways, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, through this kind of analysis, and try to inform them and their policy making processes. So that's where I'll conclude. I'm happy to answer any questions if people have as of now, or later also I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Yeah, please go ahead with questions if you have any.
So yeah, all the attendees can unmute, like whoever wants to ask the question can unmute himself or herself. I've given that privilege.
Okay, sounds great. I think there are no questions.
I have
Yeah,
some
yeah,
few
please,
points.
please go ahead.
Yeah. As I looked upon the policies for the solar rooftop for residential sectors as well for industrial sector, I found for industrial there are quite concerns when they give net metering as an option for the industries who are setting up a rooftop plant on their roof. So I don't know why, but they generally insist that they should not install a net meter simply because the discom or the general NTCP who has put a lot of money on the coal sector or present infrastructure would not be revived as well. They would be self captivating their consumption. So
Yeah.
and similar is the problem that a recent notification from the power ministry came that there would be no net meter allowed for residential sectors above 5 kilowatt power plant. So these policies are like quite hindering the aim right now.
Yes,
So
yes.
what's your look on it?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is a very interesting question, and we work on rooftop solar in a big way. And we are closely aligning with the BSES, distribution company, which is the Delhi, within Delhi, it's the distribution company. Though there is a larger concern in all the distribution companies that, see, imagine currently who is the producer. So these are big, producers like, let's say NTPC. There's some private producers. They are basically, and then in solar also, in the large solar, like Adani is now the world's biggest solar producer. So there are big players on the supply side, and then there are distribution companies. So because we consume electricity, these are many companies that kind of make money in that process, right? Which are electricity generation companies and distribution companies. If solar rooftop becomes a success, it's a very different scenario. So think about people like you and me have now become business people. We have become electricity generators ourselves, and also distributors, because there is no need for distribution. It is just on our rooftop. So because of which the revenues, or especially distribution companies, are going to go down, are expected to go down. So obviously, I mean, they are not happy about it at all, right? What we are trying to do is, are there some business models in which, even in this future, where many of us will start becoming generators, uh, even in that future, is there a role for distribution companies, and what is the role, right? So those are the things that we are exploring, and there are interesting business models that are coming. But the larger point is, we have to first accept that there could be a challenge. There clearly is. Many discoms are opposing solar rooftop. The second point is, we have to accept that every problem or every such challenge can be solved. It has a solution. The solution is a business model. It might, obviously there is a role of technology, different technologies, but the solution has to be some new form of business model where these distribution companies are also able to make money. uh, and that is how we are looking at the problem, and we are solving the problem. The Delhi BSCS is engaging with a big way with us, just to find those alternative business models. So it is experimenting with these business models, and we are hoping that distribution companies across India will experiment and not become a hindrance, which they are currently, because of this fear that they are going to lose revenue in a big way. And they're anyways revenue strapped. That India's distribution companies are the continuously loss making companies year after year. So every 5-6 years the government of India has to enter and bail them out. And in this scenario, if you take away another revenue source for them, which is the residential revenue source, then obviously they are not going to be happy. But this is a situation we are trying to solve for it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for such a very concise and very informative presentation with a lot of very simple examples, which was very easy to understand. So my question is, there are two questions. One is about you were discussing about global change analysis model. Do we have any open source softwares to analyze these emissions for modeling? That is the one question. And another one is about the solar PVs. Actually, uh, uh, If I'm correct, the estimated life of solar PVs is around maximum of around 20-25 years. So whether it is recyclable or how are we going to deal with the disposing of this solar PVs? Otherwise, it will be going to be another environmental issue after 20-25 years.
Yeah,
So could you
definitely.
please give some insights into this?
Yeah, so definitely that problem has been identified, and as as happens in any other case, as I initially said about the HFC and HCFC debate, also we solve one problem but unknowingly we walk into another problem. It is very clear that solar panels are going to create a lot of waste, a lot of e-waste. The only way to get out of it is what people are saying is recycling. But recycling also has its own cost. What the hope is that when the numbers become large, that the economies of scale will start kicking in. So the recycling process will become much more cost effective, because otherwise, as of now, it is very, very expensive, right? So the problem people have already identified. We have identified the problem that, well, clearly this is going to be the, what do you say, the repercussion of going into a long, uh, PV dominant electricity system. Clearly, this is going to be the repercussion of that unwanted repercussion. We have to solve for it. Currently, the solution is known to be recycling. Again, not in their smaller volumes which are there as of now, but in larger volumes, which will happen in the future. But again, cost is going to be very important. We have to find ways, and I think uh, what the government is simply, as it is not a problem crisis right now. So as many times, the government makes plans, it is cognizant, but there is no need for an action as of now. So that's why there is no action on it, so to speak. But the problem is known, and some solutions are also known. As when the problem becomes bigger, and that's when many of the government system kind of wake up, and we are very sure that we will be able to do something about this problem. So that is the response to the solar PV waste issue, because that is an important issue. The second thing about the global change analysis model, yes, this is a community model, which means anybody can learn it. But with any of these models, these are also very complicated models. So it's like generally PhD students use these models. So it is across 1 year, 2 year, when you dedicatedly work at least a year, if not 2 years, then you are able to learn how to operate the model and become sort of comfortable. So the model is available. We are already training our colleagues from IT Roorkee, from IIM Sambalpur, and other institutions across India to learn this model. So, I mean, if anybody is interested to learn, please get in touch with me. What is important is people should be ready to dedicate like a year or so. For an year does not mean one day in a week. Year means actually, 3 to 4 days in a week kind of thing. Only then you will be able to master the model in a year. And that option is there because it's a community model. So anybody is interested, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Vaibhav.
Yeah, good afternoon. Hello.
My question is, how do you see the future of renewable sources in households and particularly in railways?
So, I mean, on households, renewable sources generally would mean solar rooftop. That's what our understanding is. You know, ultimately, if on the supply side also, if let's say we start getting, let's say, biofuels uh, in some form, a lot of supply systems, households are not, placed to create the supply systems apart from solar rooftop, because for everything else, be it say biogas or anything, uh, a larger investments are required for biofuels and all, which industries will do. Like for example, hydrogen. A lot of people are saying hydrogen could be used as an alternative to natural gas. uh, it may very well could be, but of course in that supply chain, consumers are like end takers. They are not going to do anything if the supply is available, and it is safe. Then consumers can switch to it. That's what they will do. But so the only technology is kind of rooftop technology, where consumers are going to play a big role. But as I said, it's also because electricity is anyways cross subsidized, so we pay cheaper electricity. So that is why for many commercial enterprises which pay higher for electricity, rooftop is becoming very viable. And that's why the biggest jump in rooftop is in commercial sector. But if you look at the residential sector, I mean, many people, the investment rate is lower just because of this, the cross subsidy which is existing here. But that's what I see as a big potential for rooftop. Second question was, I think, in the industrial sector. So that was the question, right? Residential and industrial sector.
No. The question was about railways, and
About
I shall
railways.
correct myself. Actually, my question was regarding actually green buildings.
Okay. So green buildings, again, the policy has been since long been there. But there's a very interesting sort of political economy of green buildings also, because what we know as the split incentive problem is what is in economics is what is prevalent there. Split incentive simply means if somebody who's investing does not receive the benefit of the investment, then the person will not invest. And that is what is happening is people are not investing. The builders, basically, their objective is to build a building and sell it. So they are not going to gain in a big way from more efficient building. Only the residents who buy that apartment or home are going to benefit, but they are not the ones who are investing in it. Generally speaking, somebody else is investing. So and there are many reasons, because there is you need building materials, that specific kind of building material which make a building green. Basically, it is a lot more investment because the economies of scale are very small as of now. But green building, in terms of debate, it has been there for long now. They're already building energy codes for commercial sectors. Commercial sector, many states have, for specific kinds of buildings beyond a particular size. Some states have also mandated that you have to go for a more energy efficient building, or adhere to the building energy codes. Basically, for residential sector, states have not done it, but the codes are already there. See, many agencies are working on it. The codes are there. It is just that, and these are there in terms of guidelines. These are not mandatory, and that is why residential builders and all kind of don't really adopt it. So, but the knowledge is there. It is more about the political economy and the economics of the system, because of which these things are not being super successful as of now. But as far as what it requires to be done, that knowledge is already there. We have got enough technical people who know about green buildings or energy efficient buildings. So that is on building. On the railways thing, railway has got a very ambitious plan, in fact, of renewable energy, and they're making actually pretty good strides. So you could start reading even newspapers also. I mean, they're every year they're adding some more platforms which are going solar. A lot of wasteland that is along with railway tracks, they're using it for producing solar. They're making the systems more electricity based kind of systems, so moving away from fossil fuel. So railways actually, because we engage with railways also very closely, they have got an environmental directorate which kind of leads these kind of operations. So they are clearly year on year they are making progress, and they have got some kind of pretty high ambition of becoming close to net zero in 20-30 years, either through their own operations or maybe through offsetting kind of processes. But yeah, so they are pretty big on this green energy kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. If you have no other questions, then we can conclude.
So yeah, thanks, Vaibhav. Yeah, like it was a very interesting session, and personally for me, I learned many new things, and like the important role that CEW played, like in the international politics regarding energy scenarios, was really commendable. And also, there's someone in the chat asking for your contact details. Like, I don't like. Maybe you can share that if you want.
I will write on. I'm not able to write on the chat as of now. I don't know why. It's only available to team members. That's what it says. But I mean, you could just write my email ID there, vaibhav.chaturvedi@cew.in. So you could also search for CW and Vaibhav. I think you will get it online, easily.
Also, I think Vaibhav, you have mentioned that on your first slide, right? And we'll be sharing the slides with the candidates.
Yeah, I don't know if the email is mentioned. Let me just quickly check if the email is mentioned in the first slide. Of course, I mean, you guys can just search. The email is not mentioned, but anybody who's interested, just search for CW and Vaibhav Chaturvedi, and you will find my contact details on the website.
Great. So thanks a lot again for like agreeing to come here and providing such beautiful insights regarding the energy scenarios and energy modeling. We hope all of you enjoyed. So for now, we'll take a break and we'll meet again at 2:30 for some meditation and some instructive sessions. So it will be starting with a session of how to deal with the COVID anxieties. So do attend that, and after that we will have a yoga session to relax you further. So hope to meet you all at 2:30. And with this, let's end this session here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me here. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Also,
So everyone
I think, Professor Pratham, I think now we will keep the this meeting on, right? We'll not stop it.